Crouch. Bind. Set.
Joe presents the House of Rugby, together with Guinness.
Hello, everybody, and once again, a very warm welcome back to House of Rugby, brought to you by Joe, together with our very good friends at Guinness. We're thinking about a bit of a rebrand at the moment. We're thinking of Stay in Your House of Rugby, brought to you by Joe, or Houses of Rugby, brought to you by Joe. Either of you got any contributions at this point?
I mean, you've had a long time to think of that. And
yeah,
that
I have indeed.
That's
yes,
it.
I have indeed.
You're like a conservative
what have you been
politician.
doing in isolation?
Right, well, Conservative politicians in some eyes are doing rather well at the moment.
I think
in others, maybe not.
I vote Conservative. I can't talk political stuff, can you? But I think
the nice thing is that Si can't bring his mic and come and join this conversation, because I can tell you he's choking on it right now. But
yeah, the old
let's
liberal
politics
Si.
for one moment and celebrate the coming together under the roof of House of Rugby, brought to you by Joe, together with our good friends at Guinness. How are we? Tiz, you look like you've gone back in time. There's a sort of 1970s Mizuno golf shirt
I know, just thought, old school.
Have you been out on the house putting green today? Have you had a little?
I've been devastated that I haven't really taken advantage of golf before the golf course shut today after last night. So, have
you got a driving range and a little back nine just in the south wing of the garden?
The golf course is only about 400 metres, so I could probably walk on, sneak a par 3 and just hit a few balls on there, and that could be my walk outside, unless a lot of other people are thinking of doing the same thing, which then obviously I'd have to turn around and come back. But yeah, pretty disappointed about that. I was thinking of Mia becoming an amazing golfer and that being part of her daily schooling routine, but
if 10,000 hours is what it takes to become elite, I think we've probably got about 3/4 of that in quarantine over the next 18 months or so. Put some time in and get it done.
Yeah, she has a go-kart, so she's spending a bit of time on the go-kart. She's practicing her cornering.
Lovely. A golfer and an F1 driver. Hoffleberries, look at this. We've been taken into the, what have we got behind us here? A little sort of west wing of your own. Is there a life-size poster of Chloe in the background?
No,
what's happening in the background?
It's a big picture of me and Chloe we're in Ibiza, and then next to it, which you can't see, it's my DJ set where I've been doing my live DJ streams, which has been going down unbelievably. But I had a really embarrassing moment. I discovered that obviously with all the advent of technology, I'm using a lovely camera here, a little Canon number, and it's got a mic on top of it, and I assumed that the sound was being picked up by the mic, but it turns out it was being picked up by my laptop, so it got me singing along. And I have the fucking worst voice in the history of the world. And it's like, I put the YouTube video up and it had about 20,000 views. We'd had, in total, when it was going live, I had about 20,000 people on Instagram had watched it, and probably there were about 15,000 people watching it live. And then at the end of it, when I watched recording back, you can hear me singing along, tone deaf, completely out of time. So I had to take it down. I took it down. I know.
Live by your moments. Don't duck and dive.
But I put you when we did the live show in Cardiff, you obviously pulled out this thing. You did a bit of singing again there. You sounded good, mate, don't you?
Yeah, it's just the problem is that when you're DJing, it's just I've got no pitch. I've got no. So if there's background music,
did you not pick out your pitching fork and ding?
No, sadly not. So the problem is that
I had one of those in the choir at school.
Of course you did.
No, but I basically had I had to take it down, but I've got the actual mixes were recorded via my iPhone with no singing, so they've gone up on Mixcloud and getting some good love. So apart from that, I went to tidy my office and just made a huge mess. You know, I started off to go, right, I'm going to endeavour to do something really good here. I took everything down, and then just sat there and lost the will to live. And I was like, this is fucking going nowhere. And Chloe was like, you're not going to leave that here, are you? What about all these boxes? So I finished it. It took me 2 days. I finished it. I've tidied it. I've got a lot of boxes for charity shops. They're being picked up on Friday. So all in all, it's been quite eventful. I'm quite enjoying quarantine. I'm very positive, very happy. I could do with earning some money and doing some actual purposeful work. But apart from that, I'm having the time of life.
Do you know, I think there's an element of Stockholm syndrome creeping in. I think when Boris comes back and says, right, all run free, have fun, we'll all be like, she's having quite a nice time on the inside. None of us will come out to play ever again.
But I've been seeing this thing, obviously I've been following the news and following everybody kind of getting, still leaving quarantine, still going out, still putting extra pressure on the NHS. And what I don't understand is our entire lives have been designed around living at home in 2020. You've got Netflix, you've got internet, you've got email, you've got Deliveroo, you've got FaceTime, you've got Skype, you've got toilet paper can be delivered to your house. I've just got a load of bamboo toilet paper. I don't know where from. Saw Danny
Bamboo?
Yeah, no, it's not actual real bamboo because that would
It's going to be quite sore, that, isn't it?
That would be. I don't know how
With
it's
hats,
made.
you never know. There's a curious fetish in every corner.
Of course there is. Of course, you've got to amuse yourself, haven't you? So basically, I've had that delivered. You've got everything. Yet everyone still wants to go out. And the weird thing is that you couldn't get young people and people out off their phones, off video games, out into the real world. Schools have all cancelled exercise. Now suddenly we're in quarantine. Everyone's like, Christ, got to go yachting. What, you've never been yachting? Got to go sailing across the other side. See what I've got to bloody do is run up a mountain. And you're like, what? Oh no, I too much exercise. I need to exercise. You've never exercised in a day in your life, so I'm blown away.
Yeah, it is a bit weird, isn't it? And Boris tried to do the grown-up thing and try and ease us back, just stay inside, tow along, and I won't go into full lockdown mode. And slowly, it's like, guys, all those sort of messages you get on WhatsApp where it's like going, trying to give them some space, but then they're just taking the piss. It's like, it's not that hard not to go anywhere where you don't need to. You don't need to go. Why go walk where everyone else is going to walk? Go find somewhere else if you need to. If you need to go out, go find somewhere off the beaten track.
Good. I feel that we're in a more chipper mood than we were on Thursday. Actually, I feel energy levels have come back up.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
How is Payne? Obviously, Hask doesn't have this issue. How is the first 2 days of being a full-blown teacher?
Oh my God, it is.
I've taken a little bit.
You go first.
Board rubber and writing my name on the front didn't really go down very well. It's been interesting to say the least. But I think I've enjoyed it. I have made her go for it. She's come for a run with me every morning at 7:30, which has been quite funny. So she's a bit of a boot camp.
Right.
But interesting. Trying to do maths, English, history, science for a 6-year-old. I'm still not quite there yet. But
Did you see that? There's some very good content flying around. Did you see that one of, I think she's Italian, that mother having a meltdown saying, music today, where am I going to find a brass band? It's absolutely sensational.
They sent me the score. How am I going to play the score? How is the score going to happen?
There is some very good stuff out there. Mine are 10 and 8, and I'm really enjoying the time with them when I'm concentrating, and I'm really hating it when I've got other things to do. So I've actually gaffer taped them to the ceiling of their bedroom this afternoon while I was trying to get on a couple of conference calls. But I did 12 hours, great. 24 hours, okay. 48 hours, I think 12 weeks, or whatever it's going to be. Fingers crossed. This could turn into a sort of Lord of the Flies by the time we're
next week. You'll just see
the end of it.
Her sort of in a mummy shape in the corner, just touched up.
Little cage. Little cage.
No, she's fine. She's fine. Ignore her.
And then come the parenting crusaders. Good. Well, listen, I'm glad you're both full of beans. Shall we get into
Sorry, I thought one thing before we get into it. I've taken to shouting out my window at people when they walk past in the field, shouting out, I hope that's your only walk of the day. I hope that's your first walk. And people keep looking around, and I come back up, we're going to shout that, just abusing it. It's my only bit of entertainment, because you see him turn around, and one person answered back going, it is only my first walk. I was like, all right, calm down.
Just checking.
Policing the rural parts of Northamptonshire. Well done to you.
I'd love to see Hask on patrol in a big fluorescent jacket. First walk? No, second. Get back.
Oi, first walk. How many shits do you have in a day? Put that toilet paper back.
Just before we started recording, I've had a press release land in my inbox saying Restart is delighted to announce that James Haskell has become a trustee of our charity. And would you believe it? They've actually gone as far as mentioning House of Rugby, the hugely popular House of Rugby, as well as DJing, MMA fighting, as well as business interests within the health and fitness industry. Look at that. Did you write this?
No.
Yeah. Obviously, you sent it in yourself.
Yeah.
On his new role as a Restart trustee, James said, you definitely didn't write this, I feel honoured to have been approached to become a trustee of Restart, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in to help make the game a better place. When I was playing, I knew Restart existed, and it was there to help us out as players if we needed it, but I didn't fully understand the extent of what they did for us, and still do. Since becoming a trustee, I've gained an incredible insight into the charity's commitment and dedication to supporting players and their families.
Well done.
I've just got
a text message from Si saying that's coming out.
Oh, is it? Why?
Well, obviously, it must be the first bit.
Is this exciting for you? Is this exciting for them?
Yeah, I'm massively excited. Look, I got approached and asked about it, and I, to be honest with you, I know we joke about doing a lot of work for charity, we don't talk about it, but I do work with some great charities like Sebastian's Action Trust and Bernardo's and Matt Hampson Foundation stuff, and I always like to do work, with specific people, actually give time, because I get hundreds of charity requests, and you could do 100 things badly and not really understand, not be buy into it. So Restart, they asked me, and I was a bit tentative to start with, and I said, look, what's going on? And I sort of talked to Ed Jackson about it, and we talked about it last show, and he kind of opened my eyes about it. And then I sat through this meeting, and I was blown away. I had no idea, A, at the constant requirement, B, the number of players that were reaching out in the Premiership for this hotline, particularly the mental health, because I think mental health is going to be almost the biggest cost factor in professional sport, and probably in the Premiership moving forward, outside kind of catastrophic injuries. And I sat through it, and I became really kind of quite buoyed by it. I know in the second part of the show we're going to talk about what's happening within the Premiership at the moment. But I've always been very active, in terms of players' rights and players' welfare. There's some details of stuff that never came out, involving WAS and me having to take them on strike, and lots of different things, and lots of stuff being brushed under the carpet over the years, where I've probably, to my detriment of myself, stood up and said to the powers that be, no, this isn't acceptable, no, this isn't right. And ultimately cost me my job at Wasps. But I just feel very passionate about this. And I think the problem with professional sport is, especially rugby, is a lot of players struggle in sports. They're expected to, you have all this glory, you have this financial reward. Well, you should be fine. You've got nothing to complain about. But that's just not the case. We're all humans. Everybody's human. And I think if I can make some input into it, I really want to.
Good on you. Well done. You'll certainly make noise where needed and shine the light, I know, in the right parts of it.
He'll certainly make noise anyway.
Always. Let's come back to that a little bit later on. Actually, funny enough, I would love to do a show with Matt Hampson as well. I wonder if we can organise it.
He's on full lockdown at the moment.
Of course he is. I wonder if we dial him in. Yes, of course. But actually, you work with Hambo's Foundation, don't you?
Yeah, well, I'm patron of the Hampson Foundation, so I do quite a bit. Obviously, through the golf day, we're looking at putting on a clay day this year, and everything's getting scuppered at the moment. But what he's done now in terms of the centre's up and running, fully functional, full all the time. Obviously, they've had to shut it down right now with everything that's going on, because most of the people who are going in there are quite susceptible. But they're looking at building the accommodation block and putting in a hydro pool and some other cool stuff, which is what they were raising money for at the moment. But it's a weird place for all charities at the moment, because all the functions that were going on to put coffers into the fundraising efforts have all stopped. So but I think he'd love to come on. He loves it, and he's in a really good place at the moment. He's got he's not a new girlfriend anymore, but he's happy at home in his own personal life, and then what's going on at the foundation as well. So he's in a good place.
Good. Let's get a dial in with Matt. I'd like that very much. And from a man doing amazing things, a man who's an inspiration to so many within rugby. We got one or two problems in the game right now as well. Just very quickly, coming up, we're going to revisit what was a very spicy weekend WhatsApp group between Tins and Hask. And Si and I just rather sort of passive viewers as you two went at each other in fairly vociferous terms. We'll come on to that. It did stop James and Si arguing for once, which was rather nice. Nice to see a different sort of combination in the group. We've got some classic Ben Ryan to come as well on the show, and the boys will reveal their bin juice 15s in our perfect pool. But before we get to the future, let's have a quick look at the past as well. The big news, obviously, is that Rugby Football Union ended the 2019-2020 season with immediate effect for all league, cup and country rugby, county rugby as well, except the Premiership, of course, and that is because of coronavirus. Yet there was no clarification on promotion and relegation issues. It's not an easy situation. We're expecting further updates over the course of the next month. And, you have to feel for Bill Sweeney and all those who are in power at the moment, because there are some very, very difficult decisions coming down the line. In terms of levels of uncertainty, Lord, have you ever known anything like it within not just rugby but sport right now?
No, not really. I think there's just uncertainty everywhere, isn't there? But in terms of sport, it's just such a weird place to be where you can't watch any live sport at the moment. Normally, you can turn on any channel in the world and you can find a live sport somewhere. But in terms of how it works with rugby, the game is run on a fine balance as it is, and what's going to happen. How are they going to run the season if it comes back? If say in 2 months down the line they're allowed to start playing, or they can play behind doors, how is it going to work to get it finished so that you have an end to the season? Could they just go into basically a knockout sort of competition from using how they do it for the playoffs all the way from the end, and just say that's where you finished and that's the end of the season? But someone's always going to moan, but then there's never going to be a happy outcome, is there, of where you go? Obviously, European Cup is now being pushed back to whenever that's going to be. We just don't know when this will end. So how can you put any clarity around what you're going to do at the end of it? It's very difficult to see. But everyone wants. Ultimately, if, say, it came back in June, you just have to take that after, 13 games, that's the table, and you play your playoffs, and then you get your season done, and people just have to accept that. And then you've already got your semi-finals of the European Cup. You just crack on and get those done, and then at least you've put an end to the season, and you can get back to starting the new one fresh.
Hask?
Yeah, look, it's so difficult because we've got no tangible end in sight to all of this. I think leaving the door open for the guys to finish is important, mainly because of potentially what we're going to come on to talk to you about later with the financial stuff. Is a lot of things are going on based on the season being restarted, and if it never restarts, then I think during this period, sadly, if it continues too long, that we will lose a club or two. Because
just two?
Well,
I think it's two, isn't it? I think there's a good chance we'd lose two.
So I think they could be in a spot of bother. It's a really hard one because when you get into situations like this, and as a sports person before, and are lucky enough. Not often, but people, sports fans are very kind, as can be, and said, look, you're a legend, mate, this, that, well done. And then in times like this, you realise that sport is exactly that. It's a sport, it's chasing balls around, it pales into insignificance. And then you look at the actual heroes, actual legends, people that don't ever get asked for an autograph, but people like the NHS staff and NHS workers and people who actually do that. It puts everything into perspective. So I don't think any rugby players are probably sitting around, not realising the gravity of the situation. But I think leaving the door open potentially to try to finish in some capacity is there. I mean, look, normally, some teams don't get all the way to, to the finals and then have kind of June or a month off completely. We could delay the start of the season, maybe change the format for next season, playing less games. People always talk about player burnout. And cutting match numbers. It's nothing to do, it's the training that kills it. But if you're preparing for less games, then there's less training. That could be the answer, potentially, what Tins and I were speaking about last time. Just playing each other once, shortening the season down, getting it done, potentially, not to end this season, but to finish it off in the months where we don't normally play and compact next season.
So, I'm quite actually amazed that no one's sort of come out with if you look at like what P-Show did in terms of how he wanted the season, throwing something quite radical out there. Because if there is no end in sight and they still want to get this season done for revenue and for the benefit of the clubs, they're talking about midweek games, all sorts, aren't they? So I'm amazed no one's come out with an idea of then how you could pull together a global season, or how you could pull together rugby and then being a summer sport rather than a winter sport. I would have thought someone might have come out, but then I suppose they'll get their end bit off as well.
Well, I wonder if they're doing it behind the scenes. I wonder if they're looking at it behind the scenes, and I wonder if there is I genuinely wonder if we will come back and complete what we currently see as the rugby landscape, or whether, if you look at some of the projections of what our lives are going to be like over the next, they're talking about this running till November 2021, and it'll be 3 weeks of isolation and you'll get a month out, and then the spike will come back up and it'll all be back inside for 3 weeks. I mean, there is no way, if that is to be reality, that you can run any sort of meaningful conversation or competition, I should say. And I wonder if this is the point. I mean, you look at rugby at the moment, and long before COVID-19 arrived on the scene, it felt like the game was heading towards a reboot of rugby as we know it. You look at the game in Australia, it is dying on its backside. Broadcast of the last 25 years, Fox have pulled out and said they don't want to be involved next time. You look at rugby in South Africa, they've got 240 professional players playing overseas. The Curry Cup is dead. NPC in New Zealand is a brilliant breeding ground, but there's no real love or affection for it in the way that there used to be. I'd set you the challenge now. If you look at the global game, show me a competition or tell me a competition that you think is better than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Well, I think
Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, well, Rugby
Sevens.
World Cup's better than it was. Sevens is way better. I think our leagues, but it's always been the problem. Is Australia's problems are on the back of success of their national team. Australia thrives on what succeeds at a national, international level. So Australia not being very good at the moment absolutely kills their game because no kids want to play it. Whereas you look at Aussie football. The AFL is always big. The NRL is always good. Australia are so good at rugby league that you have to have success in Australia for people to play those sports. And whether Checker got that right or wrong, I hear he didn't really push people into the schools. He wasn't pushing the players out there to get in schools, meet kids, and bring on the next generation. And that is why it's slowly dying and falling down. South Africa, you play these games in massive stadiums that don't have anyone in, which I know that there's great support for South African rugby, but again, it's mainly...
But 15, 20 years ago, the Curry Cup was full houses.
Yeah, but, for whatever reason, that isn't. Whereas at least still in Europe, or especially in England and France, obviously, we can still, you can fill 90,000 seats as a stadium on big game day. You can do this and that. So I don't think in terms of fan base, our game is struggling. It's just other places in the world. But then does it get to that point what we talked about in obviously England and France being the two strongest nations in terms of player pools and people who are watching? Do we have to then do something that will spice up the game that might affect us, but then will be better for the global game? There's definitely a question within that.
I'm not saying that I think the game is struggling up here. I'm just saying, is it a better product than it was 10, 15 years ago when you boys were full of hair and full of running?
I think it's a better product in terms of what you get. Yeah. I think the scrum stuff, obviously there was a video on WhatsApp going around about the old scrums when it was just, the refs just let it get on with it and let the players sort it out, and you just play off the back of it, which I do sort of miss a little bit. I think it's a bit sterile from that point of view. But in terms of the athletes and the tries that you end up seeing, so you do see some far more skillful players. But it'd be interesting to see those players playing in the rules that we played with, or how it would work then. But I don't know. You can't. I don't think you can sort of judge it. Though the athletes are completely different now. They're actually quite talented as athletes rather than just being quite clever as rugby players.
Okay. I'll give you the Premiership then. So we've got World Cup, we've got Sevens, we've got Premiership. I'm not sure the top 14 is a better product than it was. It's brilliant for colour and fanfare, but I don't think the rugby...
I don't think it's ever been a great product.
I think the fact that they cannot sell the international rights in the UK is testament to the fact that just people aren't interested in it. But I think if you go down the list, European rugby, I think, is nothing like what it used to be. Super Rugby is just a pale imitation of what it used to be. I think those domestic leagues that we're talking about, the Curry Cup, the NPC, just not that interesting anymore. I don't think the Rugby Championship, the Sanzar competition, is anything like what it used to be. And that's why I just wonder whether we're leading to this point where actually the game needs to say, either we balance things back out again and we get the stars back in their own countries and playing for their countries, etc., and money is less of a factor. In the reason Australian rugby is decimated is the top 50 players all play overseas.
Yeah, I mean, they
haven't got a player place to support that, whereas New Zealand can.
But then, how are you going to manage that? How are you going to tell people they can't leave? People will just leave and take the money and won't play for their country, and you still. I mean,
you put money back into the game down there. You put money, but so you balance the books in the way that the Nations League was trying to do. Well, this is what I wonder, whether we're heading to a point in rugby where actually, if over 18 months, half the clubs go out of business and all the leagues are incomplete, you find CVC come in and say, right, we'll put £1 on the table, we'll have the rights to everything, and we will invest in the competitions, and we'll get them back up and running again in a product and in an organised way that means that people can buy into rugby as a whole and not just a fragmented conversation.
It's going to take a lot of money. CVC obviously put a lot of money into the Premiership, and that hasn't really fixed the problem in terms of financials.
No, I think it's probably a starting point, though. I think they're getting a foot in the door of all these competitions.
Yeah, well,
I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I don't necessarily have the answers.
I generally agree with you. I think for the Southern Hemisphere, it is a problem that they can't keep their players on there. I mean, New Zealand have always done it well. In fact, that they let people have sabbaticals and they go off and they come back, and no one else seems to have really done that in terms of like Australia. Say to them, stay and play the season, and then you can go off and have a sabbatical, but you come back every year. They haven't really done that. Whether that's something they could look at, I don't know the ins and outs well enough to speak on the Southern Hemisphere part. But yeah, I mean, cash is a problem for all of them. Hence why they talked about South Africa coming over and joining our Six Nations, which would be weird. But they're always looking at other things, shorter flight times. Would more people travel? I don't know.
Hask, you were rugby Norse growing up. I know you loved it. How much rugby did you watch as a kid, and how much rugby do you watch now? And why?
I mean, I used to watch a lot of rugby. I used to go to every Wasps home and away game like an absolute keynote.
You did.
Used to get autographs. I was a massive Norse. I was late to it. I didn't start
full kit wanker. I
didn't start Norsing until I was about 14, but then I Nors from 14 to kind of 17. A condensed Nors off, and then I retired. Really, I don't watch a lot of rugby now. I mean, listen, if it's on TV, I'd watch it. I think my concerns with rugby in the professional game are that the people involved in rugby think rugby is everything. They think everybody cares about rugby. They think everybody knows about it, and they just don't. Outside in the real world, you suddenly realise if you ever get out of that bubble that people don't care, and that it's a third or fourth tier sport along with some other places. It's never going to compete with football. It's not even in the same league competition. If football's at the top of a ladder, rugby can't even see the bottom rung. So I think the whole game has to be centered around being accessible. And I think the TV commentary stuff is just diabolical, boring.
Hang on. I think across the board, I think BT have done a very good job.
I'm not
regular viewing times.
No, I think
they get the players in,
but no one watches BT. No one watches BT Sport. I don't know how many viewers they get for that Rugby Tonight show, or whatever, but no disrespect for them. It's got a great, amazing, plethora of reporters and skillful people and legends of the game. Nobody watches BT Sport unless they do it because they're going to watch the Premiership. How many people tune into Rugby Tonight? I don't know. I watched the Six Nations.
Bang goes your broadcasting career in the next.
I don't have a broadcasting career. There's no sport to broadcast on, so I don't.
Very valid. Very valid.
I don't care. And also they've got a load of other. They've got decent rugby players like Lawrence on the books. So they don't have to worry about me. But I think that. For me, I watch the coverage of the Six Nations. I watch the stuff, and I just think, there's boys still involved who were great, were great at what they did. But it's just, there's a younger generation with a short attention span. You need to be punchy. You need to be interesting. Match day experiences have to be punchy and interesting. You have to be competitive in a competitive marketplace. You have to create a product that's fun to watch, easily understandable, education around it. You have to do more with club rugbies and getting kids to play it at schools. And you have to be ruthless. More teams doesn't necessarily make better rugby, better product. I think having played in all those leagues, I think stadiums and teams could do much better match day experiences to encourage people to come in and fill stadiums and create atmospheres and day outs. That's what people want. I think the one thing about rugby, compared to any other sport, was the accessibility that the fans had to the players. You go to a Premiership football game, you're lucky to get spat on by a Premiership player. Let alone, you go to a rugby game, there's opportunities to meet players, sign autographs, have that interaction. And I think that's what's important. That the fans feel that they can be part of the journey, and that's got to maintain. And I just hope that I think any teams. We never want to lose any teams, but I think this is an opportunity for the world in large to maybe look at the way we travel, look at the way we treat people, look at the way we set up our healthcare, look at our general hygiene, and also look at in team sport, look at how we set teams up. look at how we do the business models, and see if we can do something better this time round. And I think World Rugby and all these people, instead of tinkering around and fanning around with silly rules, it's trying to deliver a product and also not being so paranoid, about the content they put out and the creation. Other sports are doing it better than rugby, and I think there's opportunities to do it. And when you tune in to watch an international game, you want someone engaging, someone upbeat, someone informed, to create something exciting for you to watch. You don't want dreary old nonsense. And I'm sorry to say that's what my experience of watching it is the last few years has been. And also, I'm not worried because they're not ever going to sign me up because I'm too controversial. So that doesn't bother me. But whoever they do get on, like for example, I thought Dylan Hartley on the BBC when he came on against France was fantastic, unbelievable,
he was superb,
current, informed, interesting, opinionated, countered, knew exactly what was going on in the mental mindset. Anybody who hasn't been around a changing room for the last kind of 4 or 5 years or knows exactly what to go, you're just watching like everybody else. You're just watching more and saying it. I don't agree. You've got to be upbeat with it. You've got to deliver a product. Remember, kids now are on these the entire time. They've got attention span. If you don't get the message across in 25 seconds, you've lost them. Unless they understand it in 25 seconds, you've lost them. And that's what rugby's got to be like. And the match day experiences, people have to be engaged. And some clubs do it well, some clubs don't do it well. And that's just my opinion, as always.
We have our weekly rant in the can. And actually, you raised some brilliant points there. Do you think, Mike, therefore, we're talking about, are we going to come back and play midweek games? Are we going to play games behind doors? I mean, how the hell are players going to get themselves fit again in any short time frame to have any sort of semblance of competing season? Is this actually the moment? And there are businesses out there, you look at them, there are some who are terrified and they're doing all they can to protect themselves from what's happening. And there are some who are saying, right, this is the norm. We have to adjust, we have to adapt, and we have to seize the opportunity. Is this the moment for rugby to say, right, we've got fundamental problems across the board. 11 Premiership clubs made financial losses last year. Australian rugby is broken. South African rugby is financially screwed. Argentina have not kicked on in the way we wanted them to. How do we fit Japan and the booming economy in there? We've got European sides that should be making greater progress than they possibly have. Romania, Georgia, etc. How do we bring them to the table? Let's get the proper power brokers, the big boys. Let's get the broadcasters around the table, and let's start again and build a product from the ground up that is bringing in the women's game. There's been amazing progress in women's rugby, and yet we've got professional sides like England and France who are now battering Wales by 60, 70 points every Six Nations. It's becoming a really unlevel playing field. Is this almost like the 100, where they've got men's and women's cricket lined up together? It's equal pay across the board. It's short, it's snappy, it's rebranded. They have seized the moment to attack and to go after audiences in a way that perhaps, sport hasn't been able to do before. Is this the moment for rugby to say, right, reboot, let's go again and do it properly?
Well, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had around it because, as you said, they are in a prime situation to do it. We don't know what the future is going to hold in terms of where we're going to be in 6 months, we don't even know where we're going to be in 2 months, 4 weeks. So those conversations should be going on because, as you've listed, there's enough reasons to actually sit down and look at it from a global perspective, a global season. How is international setup in the best, most efficient way of doing it? That has to go on because, as you said before, if you come back and it's 2 months down the line, they say, you can play behind closed doors, you have another flare up, you have to do this all over again, which it is mind-boggling, but it could definitely happen. Then it's not going to get you anywhere. So you'd be better just trying to sit down, take a deep breath, and actually going through it in a fine-tooth comb and going, right, how do we get every club around the world that's playing professionally looking to be on an even keel in terms of, the clubs aren't losing vast amounts of money at the end of each year. How does this work with the players? Do the players just have to accept that there's some roles within them that, for us, for example, the salary cap has escalated too quickly. We should have never brought in, maybe not even brought in one marquee player, let alone two marquee players, and then have a full rethink that way and how it works. I think that should be going on. Someone somewhere within World Rugby or within the home nations, whoever, be it CEOs of all the rugby unions around the world, should be thinking about that and having a conversation about it because, as you said, it is the perfect time to do it if we're going to do it.
Has, from a player's point of view, I'd be really interested. So I've spoken to Irish players in the past who roll their eyes about that. There's another one I didn't put on the list, but the Pro 14 is not the product that it once was. You know, we don't see Johnny Sexton there. We've been through all this and we've discussed it. But I've spoken to Irish players in the past who roll their eyes at the Pro 14. It is a training ground to get ready for Europe, and it's a training ground to get ready for Six Nations, Summer Tours, Autumn Internationals. I have heard from England players in the past who are sad at what the European competition has now become. Those mega days we had when it was the Heineken Cup and when it was full houses and huge events, it's not that anymore. Is there an appetite from the players' perspective to say, do you know, we actually want to play in competitions where the sex appeal is back and the full houses are in, and or from a player's point of view, is it just putting your boots on and going out to do your job?
No, 100%. Look, you know, obviously when you play rugby, the reason you start playing or any sport is because you love it and you want to see how good you can do, and then you get caught up in it and you say you have a failure, then you want to do better and better, and you become a professional, and then you know you sign whatever contract anyone will put under your nose just to get the opportunity. And as you build up and your profile builds, you know, things become about, you know, financial gain to match what you're doing on the field, but ultimately you want to enjoy your job. And the one thing you learn when you've retired is that those big moments, those big occasions were what it was worth. You know, winning with teammates, what it was worth. Going through the pain and training, and then going out in the field is the value, is the kudos. You know, financial gain is great. You don't earn enough money to. Well, you know, certainly, you know, there's a few players now, if you read some of them reports, have earned enough money. But a few guys, you know, who are going to have to, you have to keep working, have to keep, you know, fighting once you play. So, you know, if financial gain isn't like football, what is it? What is it about? And it's about those big weekends. It's about those monumental opportunities. You know, I genuinely, and this is what I've got an unbelievable amount of respect for people who play in like the Championship or like lower leagues, all those kind of things, running out against nobody. I would hate that. I just couldn't. If I had to do that, I don't love the game enough to want to do that. I want to play on those big occasions. I want to go and play Toulouse away or Toulon. You know, I want to come over and play a Leicester at Welford Road. You know, or a Sarries at Allianz Park. I wanted those big moments, and that's what was really important. I think every single player, young players aspire to have it. Current players want to have it. And if you know, the Heineken Cup was the ultimate tournament. You know, I moved to France, to Stade Francais, to capture that every weekend, because you know we would be playing. You know, in the Premiership, in the Premiership, you know, however many years ago it was now, you know, you would have a couple of games a season which would be easy rubber, you know, dead rubbers. You'd be like, you know, you could put a second team out, go and smash them, but you would have some big games. But then what you would ultimately have is, you know, those big build-ups to like, you know. Cast away for Wasps, you know, Joe Worsley last dying tackle to get through to quarterfinals of the Heineken Cup. You know, Leinster at Adams Park. You know, we needed to beat them by 2 tries or whatever. All those kind of big moments stand in mind, and they're all Heineken Cup moments. And I think every player, if you could create a tournament that. It doesn't matter if it's short format. Nobody wants to play more rugby. They want to play better quality rugby in front of bigger crowds. You know, and that's what every player aspires to, and that's what they need to think. It's not about playing more and getting more games or trying to get more revenue. It's about better quality, bigger moments, bigger match day experiences for both players and fans.
I mean, I agree with Hask in terms of the memories that you get. I think, you know, I joined in 97, 98 season. Obviously, Bath went on and won the Heineken Cup that year. And, you know, you think of the teams that were playing, but there was Cardiff still in there. I'm sure there was Ponty was in there. I think what professional has brought is we've lost a massive amount of clubs. You know, if you look at Wales now and you look at Scotland, you know, you don't have the feared matches of sort of going to St Helens to play Neath, or, you know, having the old school Swansea. It's that sort of side has sterilised it a bit, and I think you used to have these great epic battles. You know, I remember Bolsh got picked for the first one. I can't remember who it was. Come on, Payne, you'll know everyone we played in 98 group stages of the Heineken Cup, or the 97, 98. Do you?
Yeah, I do, but I can't reveal it now.
But
do you play Llanelli? I think there was Llanelli in there. Was that semi-final?
Well, whoever Bolsh got picked, and it was raining, so Robbo sort of turned up to him, and he was picked to start that day. And then because it was raining, he told him he wasn't playing, and Matt Perry was playing. So and Bolsh is like, "How does that even work?" He goes, "Well, I don't think you were good in the wet weather." But you know, they were the games that sort of always used to get, because there was history even among those Bath crossing over the bridge and everything else. And I agree with Hask that you do have lost a bit of that, we can't bring those clubs back. I hope we could, but we can't. I think there are what you're talking about, Alex, about how do you get excited about at the same time, and that is the unfortunate side of professionalism, is you have lost sort of those historical games. I think that even that year, Brive, and how good Brive were that year, and what's happened to French rugby in terms of giants falling, Biarritz, Bayonne, clubs that you were always just, you never wanted to play them. It was always hard to go there. And I think that side of it has been dumbed down by professionalism. But was that always going to be the way? As soon as money became involved, that would become the bottom line, and that would dictate where you go. And I think, unfortunately, that's one side that comes with the more elite side of professional sport, really.
So
will you get to a place where, well, whether you'd be like the Premiership in football or whatever, would we go through that journey to then get to the point where suddenly you've got this great product with it that's really strong, that's commercially viable, that makes the clubs balance? I don't know ultimately.
So I'll put a 2p in from a broadcaster's perspective. The only thing that matters is atmosphere, and what generates atmosphere is rivalry, and what generates rivalry is local derbies. So the games that matter now, and the games that the biggest game that people want to watch at the moment is England against Wales, because there is 250 years of genuine history, animosity, and it matters to people either side of the boundary. Bath Gloucester matters to people either side of the boundary. Edinburgh Glasgow matters to people. With the greatest of respect, Connacht against the Southern Kings in the Pro 14 just is a game for the sake of a game. The problem with rugby at the moment is there's far too much of it. It's spread thinly across the board. There is way too much rugby that just isn't interesting to people, and it is just it's just a non-entity. Therefore, less is more. Rivalry is absolutely paramount. The question I wanted to ask you is: build me a competition that gets people bums on seats on a Saturday afternoon. And I think it's localised. It is a British and Irish league. It's the top 14. It's boost the Curry Cup, the Air New Zealand Cup, and then let's bring together the 10, 14, 16 best teams from those leagues and have a global competition, and let's have the best team in the world at the end of it.
Can I ask one thing, Tim, because you know a lot better, the stuff better than me. So I don't get, as well as a player, why you end up having all these like side cups and stuff. I know some of those side tournaments,
get rid of it,
bits and people make more money for the club, bizarrely. So the old Power Gen Cup used to make the club more money than winning the Premiership.
That's changed name more than anything else in the world, hasn't it?
Pilkington Cup, John Player Cup, Tetley's Bitter Cup. It's gone through all the ringers.
So what I don't get is why you don't have the Premiership, right? So if you had the Premiership as it is, you played each team once for a massive game, alternate home and away. You had a second team league that mirrored that, so the young players got the opportunities there, and then you got rid of all those other tournaments. Encourage those companies to put more investments in the actual Premiership, and then kept the European tournament as it is. And just did that. That would be better than trying to, because I don't half these talk. I mean, I told you that this year when I was bin juiced for Saints, when I was injured a lot, and I didn't get into England, I ended up playing in the what was the cup called, the LV, right?
The LV. Yeah.
I told everyone I thought LV was like they gave like Louis Vuitton to the players. I'd never heard of it. I was always with England. I didn't realise there was an actual tournament. I came back and discovered there was a whole new world of absolute bin juice. Like, this is my opportunity. It's like, it's not an opportunity. Nobody cares. You're never going to be seen again. As soon as the England players come back, you would dust. But that's the dream that everyone sold. I don't know why you would. What's the point? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean that they are purely money spinners. I mean, when I was doing player coach at Gloucester, they were just seen as sort of, if you look at it, Nigel Davies or whoever was coaching, Dean Ryan would basically step aside and whether it be Hoggy who took over or whether it be and Andrew Stanley or who took over, they would step completely aside. You bring in a whole young team and it's just all about blooding them, but then everyone else is doing the same thing, so it's basically like a second team game. And then no one goes to it. Does it take gloss then off the rest of the season? Probably does a bit, but then it's like the FA Cup now, where people take them away, or the Carabao Cup, where everyone moans about the people not playing the seconds, and then as soon as they get to the semi-finals, they bring in the first. But it's just for finance. But it was better, and I do believe it was still better when we had a proper second team league, and you could look at doing something like Aussie club rugby do, where you could have the seconds as your warm up before the first play, but people are too precious about their pitches. But at least you would get.
God, they're all artificial now.
Well, if they do, there's no reason for not doing it, and the fans get what they want. They'll get 2 games in one. Your bars will be open longer. You can do, as Haskell's already talked about, you can do a lot more around the stadium in terms of fan activation, getting things on, getting DJs there, making it a better stadium. Hask is available for all bookings.
I'm available.
Hello. Just that whole stadium experience you can do a lot better. But yeah, I agree with you. I think sometimes less is more. If you can get bigger stands, and then you go for the approach of what Super Rugby does, and you play each other home and away, and you have a genuine knockout for a purpose, then I'd be all for that. But then the numbers always have to stack up, because ultimately it always comes down to a numbers game.
But what I want to know is that when the original tournaments are setting up here, and they're adding these little bolt-ons and these bits and pieces, like, for example, now they've got the Sevens series that follows Premiership Sevens and all this kind of other stuff. When they're coming and selling these sponsorship rights, why don't they just go, hold on a minute, instead of inventing a whole new tournament because we can't fit you in with the Premiership, why isn't there a well-organised body that then goes, do you know what, we're going to eject this money back into the Premiership, back into what we're doing, let's keep it under one guise of a Premiership and a European tournament, put all the side noise out of the way? Because Alex's point, there's just too much, more is not better. And I just think players don't want it. Players don't care. They just want to play in those big spectacles, get paid to do what they love. And I think it's something we should be looked at. And I think this is a great reset for all this stuff. Because if Power Gen want to get involved in the game, then let's get them, Power Gen corner flags. And then, whatever you want, there's different ways of doing it. And people can still attract the money, I think.
I think there's always a body that runs something that wants to make sure they get their money, isn't there, as well? So there's numerous people who want their slice of the pie. So I don't know what the answer is. Wish I did, but I think there is definitely space to have a conversation about. It might be taken out of your hands if a couple of clubs fold, or if this goes on for a long period of time, then they're going to have to do it anyway and look at how they restructure. So it might be forced upon us, but then hopefully there's some people who have the foresight to go and look at it now.
I go stronger than that, Tins. I think this is an absolute watershed moment for the game. I think you can have a conversation, and we've had thousands of conversations. I think if they don't take the chance that's there in front of them now to sort rugby from top to bottom,
who runs with it though? Who starts?
Well, somebody needs to come in and put the money down and say this is how we're going to do things from now. I mean, I think to be honest with you, in 6 months' time, in a year's time, there are going to be a lot of people crying out for that. I think there've been some very powerful figures, some very powerful bodies in the game. And it's very, very difficult to get, the power brokers lined up and on the same page at any one point. But I think if what unfolds over the next 12 months comes to pass, there are going to be a lot of people crying out for someone to come in and say, look, please, 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 will somebody give us a structure, put some investment on the table and take this off our hands and make it viable.
It's what's difficult is because if you look at Wales, Ireland, Scotland, Italy, basically they are run. The only reason those club games are run is to succeed in international rugby. Whereas in England, you then have to bring in the owners. So at least with the other home nations, you're just dealing with their international body. Whereas with us, you have 12 owners. If you go down the league, obviously Newcastle, you've got 13 owners who will all have their own opinions, all have their own slice of what they want to do it.
But that's my point. In 12 months' time, those owners might well want to get out of the game altogether.
Yeah, but then you're relying on owners wanting to get out. But that ain't going to happen in France. Well, it might do. You never know. But I wouldn't see it happening in France. They love that control of having a rugby club if you're wealthy in France, whereas I think you're probably still a bit more business-minded over here. But it's going to be a very hard conversation to have, or someone to come in and go, right, that's how much money I want to own all the clubs, or I want to do it this way. I just don't know how that would happen, how it would look, how it could happen.
Build me a dream structure, dream competition. Are we looking at? I'm just throwing it out there. British Norris League, top 14, Currie Cup, a trans-Tasman competition, J-League in Japan, and a sort of South American league, all run concurrently, and then we pick the best 2 out of each, and you have yourself called a semis final. Do we have to align top flight domestic competitions in a way that we've never done it before?
Well, I mean, it would be great to do, as you say, have the best of the best in sort of our home nations. I don't know whether you have a European, whether you have sort of South Africa, and then Southern Hemisphere, or with Japan, and then just split them so you never play each other home and away. So everyone's doing the same thing, and then you go into a global league would be amazing. But that means you have to have a global season. Because that would then dictate where you have your internationals, where the Six Nations would sit, where obviously the whatever it is now, the Rugby Championship would sit.
Tell you what,
and then
we're going to go homeschooling. I'm going to set you some homework. You are going to have one site. Yeah, exactly. You've got to build me for the next show how you would like. We're going to press Control-Alt-Delete on the global game as we know it, and you have got a one-pager business plan for how to save rugby. Haskell, you'll be DJing at every game, I know, but what should rugby do from this point? And I tell you what, viewers, answers on a postcard. You can comment, get involved in the Facebook group. Let's put our time in quarantine to good use.
I think, I mean, that was just my point. I think there's a big issue as to who runs the game. What we're going to talk about in a minute is when I was playing, the PRL, are they in charge? Are the RFU in charge? Are the owners in charge?
World Rugby in charge? CVC in charge?
I can't, until somebody, I mean, look, I was, I can't go into private conversation, but I think, for example, at the RFU, there are different strands of the RFU for a long period of time who didn't talk to the other hand. So you had people sitting across an office who either were duplicating work, didn't know what work they were doing, never spoke to left hand, never spoke to right hand. They never knew what they're going on. Different jobs, different titles, a real broad management structure. And you just can't have that. There's like weird names of like people who were like performance director of something but didn't look after the England team. Just is all this confusion, all this kind of stuff as who's in charge and who's what. Until you get that worked out, no one's ever going to make a decision because everybody's watching their back. Everyone's self-interested within a certain degree. And what we're going to talk about in a minute is, what started this off is 3 owners just talking about stuff. The Saracens thing, went on for a long time because owners, just kicked up a fuss or didn't kick up a fuss or made an agreement or signed. Until there's some clarity over who runs the show and who makes actual decisions, you're just a hide into nothing. It's just all rhetoric and talk because you're just never going to get anything done.
I'll tell you one other thing, which might be quite interesting. And again, with that one, is sort of talk out of turn. If you are a rugby fan now and you want to watch all these competitions, you need Sky to watch. And obviously, I've got a vested interest in this, but this isn't about Sky. You've got to have Sky to watch your Super Rugby and the Lions and your England Autumn Internationals. You've got to have BT to watch the Premiership in Europe. You've got to have Premier Sports to watch the Pro 14 and some of the Autumn Internationals. You've got to have some subscription online to watch the top 14. As a customer and a consumer of the game, you are being pulled. It's BBC and ITV. I mean, it's not difficult to find the Six Nations, but you're hopping between the two. The landscape is littered with rugby, left, right, and centre. And people used to lambast the days when Sky had it all, and I can understand that. Some people hate Sky, some people love it. But there was one focal point which showed it all. We had European Rugby, Premiership Rugby. We had Lions. We had the Autumn Internationals. We had Super Rugby, we had the Sevens. You had one point.
Rugby Club.
Those were the days, weren't they? But my point is that as a consumer now, you just get tired of trying to find what you're trying to watch or what you want to watch, and therefore you give up and you go and do something else. And, there are obviously conversations going on around the Six Nations at the moment. There are obviously conversations going on, around where rugby is going to end up at this point. But I think the consumers are being challenged out of their minds and to a point of apathy and lethargy to try and find rugby that they want to watch, and they're being asked to fork out a fortune for it. I think I genuinely, I really think rugby is at a huge cliff edge here, and somehow the problems that the game has got right now, this has to be the point where everything comes together and gets sorted out. Otherwise, if we continue as we are, where will the game be in 5 years' time?
I'll be head of the RFU.
Right. That in itself is reason enough to get the power brokers around the table and get it sorted. Should we leave it there? You've got your homework. Build me a season and a structure and a plan to save the game. Hask, I'm expecting more than just crayons and a smiley face.
Season. There's the sky. There's the sun. If you didn't draw the sun in the corner of the paper with lights coming off it, you would never had a childhood. That's how the sun's always been.
Do you know, it's not a bad plan. And on that note, you're watching and listening to House of Rugby. I wasn't expecting to get quite as into it as we have tonight. I was sort of talking more about Hask colouring in and Tim's building a West Wing, but you're economising. You're turning off the lights.
I was just seeing what it looks like. It's really bright with this light on, so I was just seeing what it looked like without it on. But
good.
That's quite bright.
House of Rugby on Joe, together with Guinness and me, Alex Payne, alongside Hask and Tim. Still to come, we're going to continue our conversation and assess how coronavirus is affecting the players. We were trying to get a couple on, but perhaps wisely they are doing other things. The boys are going to pick a bin juice 15 for the perfect pour. But with so many home alone at the moment and stuck inside, could we recommend some of the House of Rugby back catalogue, including Shane Williams, Alex Good, Rachel Burford, Justin Marshall, and Tom Wood, to name but a few? We also went on an emotional journey to Hiroshima, actually, at the Rugby World Cup last year, and took James back to his old club, the Rico Black Rams, to have a little look at that as well. But we have also, and arguably the star of our guests over the course of the last, what has it been, 18 months, 2 years? I don't know. We've had 3 wonderful episodes and counting with this man.
And then a mate said to me on Twitter, do you fancy Fiji jobs available?
It came through Twitter?
Yeah, it came through Twitter originally, yeah. Social media, right? It has its benefits. I put my CV in and I'd actually played against Fiji, I'd coached against Fiji and had a couple of Fijian boys that had played from the British Army for England. I saw Daman Damu, a really good player. Yeah. And they said, let's have a Skype interview at 2 in the afternoon in Suva, 2 in the morning in Teddington, where I was living. And had the laptop ready. I took the turtleneck off. I was wearing a tie, actually. At 2 in the morning, a couple of double espressos, and then 2:33, 3:30, and no one had called. And, if you've been to Fiji, I know you haven't been, but it's Fiji time, right? No hurry, no worry, And so eventually 4 o'clock, it fires up, and they just project my face onto 35 Gordon Street at the CEO's back wall. Everyone's kind of peering in, asking if I knew Johnny Wilkinson, if I'd met the Queen. Kind of serious questions, really. And
what did you answer?
Have not met the Queen, and I'd done one session with Johnny Wilkinson, so I shook his hand. I think that was about
sort of similar. That's what Queen's job.
Yeah, but no, not met the Queen. And I stayed awake, which I thought was a success. And then in the morning, I thought I'd better find out a bit more about Fiji because I'd never been. And I got on the Fiji.
Did they give you the job then and there? Or did they say
no, I got on the Fiji Times website to have a look and see a bit more about Fiji. And the first bit was the CEO that just interviewed me had been sacked immediately after my interview. Right. So that was that. And then 2 weeks later, I'm in Jamie Oliver's in Richmond, and we're out having dinner. So I see it's +679, which is Fiji. I pick it up and say hi, and said hi. This is Berlin Kafoa. I'm the acting chief executive of the Fiji Rugby Union. We've got a press conference in 20 minutes. So I said, okay, that's great. What's it about? I said, to appoint you as a new Sevens coach. So I said, okay, I'll get a say in this. He said, yeah, 20 minutes, call me back. So we kind of went through the logistics of it all, moving house, going to all that sort of stuff.
In 20 minutes?
Well, it didn't take that long. As soon as I put the phone down, I was kind of like, those decisions that you have to make sometimes in life that, my heart was soaring, thinking this is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But your stomach is doing somersaults.
Yeah.
And I just picked a phone. I didn't know how long my contract was for, how much I was going to get paid, what it'd be like to live in Fiji, where the team were, who my bosses were. I just said, yeah, okay. And they said, great, if you can get there in about 4 days, if you can buy your ticket. I should have realised, the plane ticket, if you can buy your tickets, we'll reimburse you when you get. And that never happened.
You're watching the House of Rugby on Joe, together with Guinness.
So that is the wonderful, the slightly curious, the very effervescent world of Mr. Ben Ryan, who we hopefully will catch up with again sooner rather than later. What an extraordinary life in the game he has led. And perhaps if we're looking to rebuild rugby union, he'd be quite a good person to bring in on that. He's got some fantastic ideas. Back to coronavirus, though. That is the story that is dominating headlines all over the world right now. Let's get into it from a player's perspective, actually. The big news that's sort of been filtering out in dribs and drabs, and it was a fairly hot topic between the two of you, player pay cuts. We're hearing that Sale have led the way, 25% pay cut there. We've had lots of other clubs following suit. Half of you were still in your boots and your jockstrap at Northampton, and they'd said to you 25% coming off your weekly pay packet. You would have done what?
So this is one of my big issues with all this stuff, right? And I've got to be careful because, you've got the RPA, right? The RPA do a fantastic job a lot of the time for this stuff, right? And ultimately, what I'm led to believe, and this has come from an agent itself, but it looks after different people, that essentially, as soon as this situation started out, 3 particular clubs, I'm not going to name them, basically, who aren't always the best run, aren't always the best way of treating their players, have basically got together and said, right, listen, we want to, this is a great opportunity to take 25% of the players while this is a situation, before things had really kind of manifested to where we are now. So kind of started doing that. They then had a meeting or a discussion with all the other clubs. A lot of the other clubs pushed back and were like, listen, actually, we don't want to do this. We don't need to do this yet. We want to wait and see. But we're kind of forced into doing it. And, once they're all doing it, realised that it was something they could do. They've gone ahead. But the issue is that this has been done by clubs approaching individual players or as a group. some clubs have done it as a group. Some people have gone after players, individuals. It's very difficult as an 18 to kind of 25 to 26-year-old, when you're called in and said, listen, the world's in a financial difficulty, could you sign this, could you do this, we're thinking about 25 to 50%, whatever they might have laid on their door, guys out of contracts, you want to put the best foot forward. My contracts with my career were only ever a year, 2 years. I always looked at envy, looked at envy with the salaries boys, but not because they were paid a fortune, but because of they were signed to long-term contracts. I could never get a house or knew where I was going to be living because my contract was always up, and especially when at Wasp, it always went down to expiring before they offered me a new one or whatever. So I never had a great experience with it. I think in the current situation that, taking some, money to keep your club afloat is the right thing to do. However, I would structure it in such a way that it should be perceived as a loan. I would go back and say, listen, I will take off 25% of my pay until which time the club is up and running. And then on an incremental basis, while I'm still employed by you, will repay me that money because, I've served my purpose up to this point in time, and I will go back, and I'll be very staunch about that. My first port of call will be to pick up the phone to the RPA and go, right, listen, we as players are not negotiating this with the clubs because, the clubs, when you get pressured, I've had it before, it's very difficult to look another person across the desk. And that's why I'm always quite impressed with people who negotiate their own contracts. You have agents and have people to have those difficult conversations. And, a lot of clubs are turning around and saying, no, we're not going to loan it. You're going to take the 25%. You're going to take the cut as everybody's taking the cut. Now, I know, and there are so many people in far, far dire straits than professional sports people. Business is going to fail. I know people personally, this is going to profoundly affect. So the right thing is to support your club and take it, but structured in the right way, not done over a barrel, not taken into an office, and especially not young players. And the problem is that I've had to, I alluded to at the top of the show, I had to take, Wasps on strike with players because we weren't being paid. We weren't being paid at all. We weren't being paid any of our image rights. We weren't being paid any of this stuff. There was lots and lots and lots and lots of discrepancies that I don't want to go into now. I'm going to save them for the autobiography. Because you wouldn't believe me if I told you the stories. You wouldn't believe it. And the issue is that what all these players forget is that they are the power. And this is more. Look, I don't know if any of the players watch this, but this is a message to them. They are the power. If they decide when the season starts again and the deal hasn't been done, and they're getting screwed over, and they decide not to turn up, then there's no game. There's no club anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And I think a lot of players forget that, and they get bullied into it by emotional blackmail. And I would say that supporting your club's the right thing, but done in the right play. And this is where the RPA need to step up and say a blanket to all the players. And like we said last week with the education on restart, is the players have to understand that they need to be very staunch about this and need to be doing it the right way. Everything needs to be written down. There's no backhand conversations. There's no, being picked off, because when I took the guys on the strike, people say, well, what happens if they bully the academy players? I said, listen, we stick together. We're all in. There's no flaking away. It doesn't matter how dirty it gets, how threatening they get. They aren't going to fire all of us, and they aren't going to do it. You've got to stick together. That's the power of being in a team sport. So I think it's the right thing to do. And what Tins and I were kind of discussing on the WhatsApp thing initially was I had heard and I was watching things unfold about some of the lads being what I said was being done over. Mike, obviously, I'm not put words in his mouth, strongly that it's the right thing to do. And I 100% it is. I just think this is the moment the RPA have to represent the players and not allow any of this to happen. And there's got to be, if they want to do this as a collective, then it has to be a collective thing with the clubs. It has to be clear, and if the season starts back up or whatever, and the season starts going again, the boys need to be remunerated again for what they're doing, because this is a sport that takes a toll on your body, wrecks it. And if your boys are training and turning up and doing things, or image rights, for example, if the club's still advertising you or whatever, you need to get remunerated. But it's the right thing to do to support, and I would accept it only if I was going to get it back, or it was done in such a way that it made sense. And I found out that the coaches were getting a 25% discount, that the director was taking a 25% pay cut. Unless it was uniform across the thing and I could see it in writing, I'd kick up a massive stink, raise the union and burn the place down.
Is that why the RPA brought you in?
No, I don't think so.
I've just got a new email saying James Haskell's just stepped down from the RPA.
No, I spoke to Hoppers.
A 20-minute ambassadorship.
No, but I've always been very open about this. Open about the Premiership, the league extension, all this kind of stuff. I'm not unspoken. I always speak to Damien. I've got a great relationship with all these people. I think the RPA do an unbelievable job. I think a lot of this situation gets thrust upon them, and they're always playing catch up because the clubs go straight to the players in this situation, and the clubs have RPA reps. And I've seen the messages. RPA reps are trying to balance this out and represent the players. And the problem with all this stuff is, and it's the same thing with the Restart Foundation, is players don't care until it directly affects them. And the problem is now is that, you ask, I've had it, right, boys, we need everyone to attend this meeting. 15 people don't turn up, and then they're the first people to complain when the situation doesn't go their way. It's or somebody, right, lads, we all need to get on a conference call. Half the people don't ring in because and then it's only when you start taking stuff away from them do they start getting really bothered. So considering they're sitting around doing fuck all at the moment, they should all be talking, getting this done, getting clarity, supporting their clubs so the clubs can continue, but in such a way. And the RPA, for me, and they're probably doing it. I know Damien's on the case. They probably are doing it. I'm not saying they're not doing it, but need to make sure that that's happening, because otherwise, I've been intimidated. I was taken into an office once when I was younger and said, your agent wants 25p per mile ping. If you don't accept what we're offering, you can walk out the door now, piss off. And I was like, but Dad, they don't want to fire me, And it's like, you take that as now. If I sat there and go, listen, you've got a year to run the contract, and if you don't take that pay cut, you're not going to be here next year. I mean, you saw what was apparently quoted to Chris Ashton, from one particular club, called him and go, listen, mate, nobody likes you. We don't like you. You're not going to be missed. Go somewhere else. I've said it on the podcast before. What happens in professional rugby would make your hair fall out in terms of like business practices and shit that goes on, conversations that have, meetings that just go on, like proper David Brent meetings going on,
You two are living proof of obviously what's going on in rugby, if the hair is something to go by.
Yeah.
Lord, you were part of, was it 2000 pre-Argentina where you guys went on strike? Was that image rights? Yeah. What happened on that occasion, purely out of interest? Yeah, and where are your sympathies in this story?
No, look, we had arguments with Francis Barron and the RFU for months and months about our new EPS contracts and how we thought it fell short on where we wanted to be. I mean, you look where it is now; it's way above what it was with what we were fighting over. But at the end of the day, we decided to pull work rights, and it got solved very quickly, and we moved on, and we went on and we won that game in the weekend. So, look, I think with this, it's slightly a different story. I think, obviously, when we started talking about it on the WhatsApp group, it was very much raw, just coming out immediately, and obviously, but having spoken to a few people, having spoken to a few players, the ultimate end of it is if you stay getting paid full whack and the club folds, you're going to get nothing at the end of the day because there aren't going to be enough clubs to take every player. So some people are going to then lose their jobs. Bottom line is most clubs are losing $1 million a month. So everyone talks about the CVC money, but CVC money a lot got reinvested into the PRL or whatever.
Infrastructure club, yeah.
Yeah, infrastructure. Then a lot went to paying off debts, as we've talked about. Clubs are losing most 2 to 3 million every year. So when you actually look at the 13 million that's supposed to be out there from CVC, there's probably only 3 million probably in most clubs, maybe less in other clubs. So if you say 3 months without playing, then that's that gone. And then you're going to leave yourself 6 million in debt at the end of this year. So where does it fall? From my understanding, most clubs have done this all the way through all their workforce throughout the club. So it's not just players and coaches; it's janitors, it's bar staff, it's everyone.
My understanding is if you're earning under or 20 grand or under in most clubs, you're not taking a pay cut.
You're not taking. Yeah, that's right. I know that in Gloucester that isn't the case. They've done it with everyone, unless there is circumstances that you can prove, that you can say, look, I need a little bit of help here. If you've just taken out a new mortgage or something, for example, on a new house, then they're doing it. They've done it across the board. I think from a Gloucester point of view, they've been pretty open with the players. They've showed them the books. They've told them what it is, and I think the players have bought in. On top of that, I think I don't think the repayment method works unless the club make the money back. If the club make the money back that they have lost, then it should go back to the players as well. But are the clubs going to make that money that they've lost? Obviously, there's no BT subscriptions, as I believe. There's no BT money at the moment.
No.
There's no games. BT are losing subscriptions, so they're not paying any of the clubs. So that's obviously a massive loss for them. So this is an unprecedented time, and I think from a player's point of view, it has to be bigger than you at the moment. I know that clubs use players as commodities now and again, but I always said that players should always make the money. Any money that goes into the game should be going to the players, but it has to be at a level where the club can strive and succeed, grow, and as we talked to what we were talking about earlier, the game can get better. And I don't think right now players have illegals, and I have no doubt that some players will legal this and say that they're not doing it, and they're not. And as owners, they'll probably look at that and they'll find out who they actually want at their club and who they won't. So I think there will be players who drop out at the end of this year just on how they react to this scenario, whether that's right or wrong. Haskell probably argue that the players have got the power, as he just did, and he said, well, if they want to sue, they can sue. But I'd go back to what makes a team work is people that are with it, that are in it, and if they can't see that where the game is now, they need to have some understanding. It's just not all about their bottom line.
Do you have any buy-in to the argument that players have to be careful not to look greedy with the world in the state that it's in, and with the NHS workers going above and beyond, and the selfless acts that we're seeing across the board here? Is there a perception problem coming down the line, or is it just at this point, it's everyone for themselves?
I spoke to Lance Bradley about it, CEO of Gloucester, and he's quite happy to come on the show and talk about everything that he goes through. He's been through and how he explained it, and he sat down with the players and he went through it with the senior player group and explained exactly where they are financially. And they felt that because there's no real end in sight, that it could be that it'd be broken before it gets fixed.
I have huge sympathy. I mean, it's not just in rugby; it's across the business. It's across the world. These are just horrendous times for so many people. Hask's internet has dropped out. They've obviously had enough of him as a service provider. So let's pause for a moment. Good, right. To our dear viewers, you're going to have to forgive us a little bit. We've had an absolute shocker. It's now 2:10 in the morning. We started recording this at 5 to 6 in the evening. The things and the efforts we go to bring House of Rugby to our loyal fans, we've gone above and beyond this time. We were going to do bin juice, but frankly, we're all running out of battery power. We're all running out of the will to live. Any final thoughts before we go? Funny enough, I was expecting a nice bit of a chinwag on the topiary that you've been doing, and how you're keeping yourself busy and filling your units of time. I think we've put the world to rights in a sporting context, haven't we? Have we made progress tonight, Lord?
And in true isolation form, you've set us homework. So look, exactly. I think it's where we are. I think it's where we are in the world, where we are at this time. It gives you that time to sort of reflect and look at different options, and first and foremost, everyone, please stay inside. Can we try and get this done? Because we don't want to be doing this for the rest of it. We like our little stage and our little show and being able to touch each other. It's quite nice. I think there's still more to come. There's still more to come on what me and Hask were talking about earlier with in terms of players and player cuts. So, yeah, I think there'll be far more for Thursday, and then we'll get the bin juice 15 out.
I don't know if it's you or me, but your broadband's on the wane as well. Hoff, any final thoughts?
No, I just think, look, it's a tough time. Everyone's got to cut the cloth accordingly, take measures. I think it's an opportunity to reset across the board in all walks of life, and crack on. But we just have to go from there.
Right, good. I'm really sad and I'm really sorry that we haven't been able to bring you our Bin Juice 15s. There's been a lot of prep that's gone into this. Haskell's so excited about it, but good things come to those that wait, I think, said some wise person in a marketing channel somewhere. Fellas,
this is where Si makes his money. This is where Si makes his money. Make it look seamless, bro.
This one, you're just pixelated noise at this point, which is no different to normal. That is it for this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing with. Thank you for hanging in there on House of Rugby. We are a YouTube show in the main. We're sometimes a podcast, so at the moment we're bits and pieces. Don't forget you can dig into our entire back catalogue, which is hopefully a cleaner finish than this one has been. That's on YouTube or your podcast channels. And do get involved in the Facebook group. Hopefully you're being nice to each other in there as always. Share the love, look after each other, keep the pointers coming, and let us know how we fix rugby from this point onwards. Thank you to James, thank you to Mike. Stay safe inside, look after yourselves and your loved ones. We'll see you later in the week. We're going to have another run up, would you believe, for another show later this week with the one, the only, the incredible Mr. Benjamin Kaiser of France and Clermont-Auvergne. Hang in there in the meantime. Lots of love and hugs from all of us. Goodbye, and we'll speak to you soon.
You've been watching the House of Rugby on Joe, together with Guinness. Drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.co.uk for the facts.